What we're watching in British politics right now isn't about representation, it's opportunism. We've got parties circling communities they barely understand, chasing symbols instead of solving problems, and using places like Gorton and Denton as a stage set for ideological games. Take the Green Party. Once upon a time, they were supposed to be about and only about clean air, clean water, protecting the countryside, defending local environments from corporate destruction. That was the deal. But listen to their leadership now. Listen to Zach Polanski, and you'd be forgiven for wondering whether the environment even features anymore. Instead, we've got identity politics, activist causes, imported conflicts, fashionable outrage, everything except the day-to-day environmental concerns that actually affect working class Britain. Net zero, as it's currently pursued, is a perfect example. A policy which is sold as moral progress that in reality hammers the poorest first. We've got higher energy bills, restricted transport, more pressure on people who already have the least room for manoeuvre. Even the most ardent believer struggles to explain why British pensioners should freeze whilst China builds coal plants by the dozen. Yet this madness is defended with religious fervour, while the real environmental questions, local pollution, industrial dumping, land use, housing pressure, are all quietly ignored. Now we're heading into the Gorton and Denton by-election, and suddenly Gaza is the campaign banner of choice. Not local jobs, not crime, not housing, not community cohesion, but Gaza. Because Westminster has convinced itself that politics is about block votes, not people. That if you signal loudly enough to a particular group, you can trade foreign policy slogans for loyalty at the ballot box. But here's the problem. Anyone who actually goes to Gorton and Denton, anyone who walks the streets, who's ever lived near there, worked there, had an office there, visited regularly, knows the reality doesn't match this theory. This is still an overwhelmingly white working class area, a community that's been economically abandoned, culturally sneered at and politically taken granted of for decades, treated not as citizens but as background noise. Labour did this for years, not by openly endorsing anything sinister, but by choosing silence, caution and image management. And this was all instead of moral clarity. When uncomfortable truths emerged, they simply looked away. When working class communities demanded honesty, they were told to keep quiet for the sake of community cohesion. This wasn't compassion, it was cowardice. And now the Greens appear to be doing the same trick. Different language, same contempt. A belief that people are demographic units to be managed, not neighbours to be served. And then we've got another day, another layer of the betrayal of the armed forces by our Prime Minister. It's been reported in the Telegraph today that Keir Starmer called for mandatory investigations of British troops in Iraq. And he did all this for free. Not under legal obligation, not as part of government, but voluntarily. It was sport to him. A man prepared to subject his own country's soldiers to legal jeopardy while wrapped safely in the language of virtue is not the man who should be leading us. In Denton there's a street, and it's named after a Mercian Regiment soldier, Lance Corporal Andrew Breezeway. Walk down that and let that sink in. A street named after a man who was prepared to lay down his life in defence of this nation and sadly made the ultimate sacrifice. Ask yourself whether the current leadership even recognises this kind of sacrifice, let alone honours it, or whether men like Andrew are simply useful symbols once they're safely gone. This is the inversion at the heart of modern British politics. The people who carry the heaviest burdens are ignored. The people who take the greatest risk are second-guessed. And the communities that built this country are lectured by activists who wouldn't last a week living with the consequences of their own policies. Gorton and Denton don't need slogans. They don't need these slogans imported from foreign conflicts. They don't need moral fashion shows or ideological crusades. They need honesty. They need representation rooted in reality. And they need politicians who actually see them, not as a voting bloc, not as a problem to manage, but as people. Because if none of these parties are speaking for the people who actually live there, the question becomes unavoidable. Who is?